Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tousi TV. As you guys know, over the last day or two, we've been talking a lot about the clashes on the nationalist side. We got, of course, Tommy Robinson on one side, you got Steve Laws and a few others on the other side. The debate between multiracialism and multiculturalism. So I thought might be best if I start having a bit of a debate and a discussion with someone who is on the technically the opposite side. We have with us Professor Tim Wilson, who is a liberal, let's just say academic, very much an EU Ramona, and but he loves the country and he loves the people and he wants the best. We agree on some things but disagree on other things. So I thought we would talk about this because we actually had a chat. Tim, welcome to the channel. Firstly, how are you?
Thank you. Well, it's great to be here,
Yeah.
and it's lovely to see you.
No, and we had a quick chat obviously after you also did a video about the whole Tommy Robinson thing, and
Yeah.
I thought it would be good to have a public discussion because people have the different definitions when it comes to multiracialism and versus multiculturalism. Obviously, for those who know my position, I'm very much against, especially uncontrolled multiculturalism, because by definition that could mean there are multiple cultures living with each other but not getting along because some cultures will not get along with each other. Some cultures do.
Hmm.
And I said multiracialism, especially over time, over decades, and especially centuries, like what's happened to this country centuries ago. That's just natural anyway. Nobody's pure anything. But you can still have different cultures in terms of learning from each other, whatever you want to call it, different food, but live in harmony. But you mentioned that you see that under the umbrella of multiculturalism instead of multiracialism, right? So,
Yeah. I just think the terminology. I think you're trying to define something which isn't very clearly defined, and you're trying to push a definition
that's what I
which is
did.
not universally accepted. Well, no, I enjoy it, and I really enjoyed your video. But we have to make a distinction between wanting words to mean something which maybe they don't mean, and wanting a particular outcome. And I think there's a difference between the two. And I think you're at the cutting edge of the dictionary.
Well, yeah,
And
but I care about
congratulations.
outcome. I care about just the outcome, whatever it is, and rather than the
Yeah.
actual just definitions. Yeah.
Well, could we start with the Iranian position, because I think the Iranian position is fascinating, because in a sense, what Tommy and what you were trying to say is that the real multicultural bit that we don't want is Islam. Am I wrong? Am I wrong in suggesting that or
It's
not?
not necessarily that. It's the so Tommy himself has said many times that he does have friends who happen to be culturally Muslim, and he doesn't really he's friends with
Hmm.
them, and then they actually support his work. And it's not necessarily even cultures; it's ideas, set of ideas or values or ideologies that
So there are
some of.
particular forms of Islam which
Well,
we,
yeah, I mean,
we, we, we
if you go with
fall
the
under
actual
this
text,
umbrella
it's
of.
yeah. If you go with the text itself, obviously it's expansionist, whereas obviously, for example, Judaism doesn't want to expand, doesn't want to convert people, or
Judaism doesn't, but Christianity does.
Christianity did. It just gave up, and I think that a lot of people criticize it now, saying, "Well, what happened? It's just wishy-washy now." So, but Christianity did, but Christianity won in Western Europe. So Western Europe became Christian, and there's a lot of concern that
Okay.
again, it's not really a battle between Jesus and Muhammad or Moses or anything like that. It's the I think the set of values of what we call Christian values, Judeo-Christian values, that if you were, let's just exaggerate, if we were to change it immediately and basically allow Islamism to take over, it will just change behavior. We might have pubs being shut down. I mean, even on a very smaller scale, to exaggerate the situation. But I think it's just a part of human nature in terms of
Okay.
survival.
So I say let's go back to this to what happened in 1979 with
Yeah,
the
of course.
Ayatollah taking over Iran. It's
Yeah.
something you would know a great deal more about than I do.
Hmm.
But the area which I find fascinating, and this is before your birth, I think,
Hmm.
is the bit where, so in 1979, after 16 years or 17 years, I can't remember, Khomeini was welcomed back into Iran, and I think people weren't entirely expecting that. That wasn't what the revolution
Hmm.
uh, was about, and it then became this theocracy. But the fascinating bit, which I find, is when Khomeini reinterprets the idea of suicide. So Islam, I think, is the only religion with a text which specifically condemns suicide, a primary text. It condemns suicide twice
Yeah, but then
in
there's a loophole afterwards.
Surah
Yeah,
10.
yeah,
Well, no, the loophole is what he produced, and
yeah,
I would call this heresy. I would call this heresy. Because it's not just the original text, the Quran. It's also then the hadiths, and the Prophet is saying, "Better for that man never to have lived," and various versions of something
mm,
which eventually becomes Dante's Inferno
yeah,
are then set aside for suicides.
yeah.
But the Ayatollah then turns it round and says, "This is istishha." I think or a shaheed.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
not
right.
you're not a
Shahada,
suicide.
yeah,
You're a
yeah,
martyr.
yes,
And
Shahid, yeah,
this and the first one was a fellow called Mohammed Hussein. He's a little boy.
yes, I believe, yeah.
Um,
In the
it's
Iraq
in
War, yeah,
November 1980. I think there's a public holiday even today to
yeah.
celebrate his death, and there were these big posters produced. Now, to me, that perversion of the original text and the commentaries on the original text is heresy.
So,
So there you've
yeah, I mean,
there you've got a clear statement of a form of Islam
sure,
which is utterly tyrannical, utterly heretical,
yeah.
and is something that your family, I think, ran away from.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually the fault of all this modern stuff that we're seeing, suicide bombing and all that, is actually the production of the Shias in Iran. So
Yep.
everyone that when it's the Al Qaeda or ISIS doing it, actually, it was the Iranians that invented the new version of suicide bombing. But there
And
are
a
two,
new version of Islam.
and jihad as well. But there are two things to mention here. One is that the text itself, even the original text, is very poetic. It's very cryptic at
Hmm.
times. And times it's very direct, but it's also cryptic. You have to know Arabic to learn it. But having said that, so if you want to assess the text itself, even the Quran, and let alone the Hadith, is actually it's how you interpret it. And some people would say,
Yep.
well, it says against infidels, you can do jihad to also spread the word, and jihad could also mean basically, even if that means you have to take away their life, but even if you have to sacrifice yourself, so then that's how people like Khomeini were like, well, that could mean suicide bombing. But there's also an issue with the whole debate between Christianity and how it evolved compared to like Islam and other
Hmm.
things. Is let's just say the text is the text. Judge the actions of the people, and right now we've seen a massive increase in the Islamic tribe, not every single Muslim, who, and I'm not just talking about terrorism, I'm talking about the ideas that they have when it comes to still saying stone women, for example. Whereas the Christians, not many Christians are going around saying we should stone women. It's that.
No.
Yeah. It's
Uh,
those three issues, homophobia and all that stuff.
well, I entirely agree, but I don't think that's. I don't think there you're actually embracing this idea of multiculturalism. I think multiculturalism does not mean accepting somebody else's culture. It means some sort of blending of culture, doesn't
But
it?
that was supposed to be, and I think when people like Tony Blair or David Cameron or those liberals were basically promoting multiculturalism, they were assuming at best that hey, if we're gonna get a few of like the Muslims coming from the Middle East or North Africa, then by nature, because there are more of us here, then they will blend in and they will become slightly more moderate or whatever you want to call it. In fact, what we are now seeing, and again, it's not really just about terrorism, it's also just about extreme views or backwards views. There's a big problem right now with the second generation, or sometimes the younger third generation in the Islamic families who are going around on the streets. And it's not just about, again, the Palestinian protests. That's just one example. But, there are so
Hmm.
many videos. And you've got the Hyde Parks and the Speaker's Corner. It's the young ones who sometimes you could assume actually maybe their parents blended in. Then maybe the parents actually integrated as they came in. But something's happening within the younger Islamic community, all these younger kids. Whether it's because, of course, being disillusioned with the whole British system, or we got all the rise of Islamic centers. Some of them have been dodgy with some of the imams, trying to be preaching and all that stuff. There's a problem where you would assume by nature, by second or third generation, there'll be more integration. Usually with any
Hmm.
culture, that's the case. Hindus or the Kurds or whatever you want to call the French, even the Americans. But somehow there's a very specific problem that even the House of Commons that they talked about this a while ago, that the second generation and the younger third generation in the certain Islamic cultures, they are becoming worse than their parents in terms of being backwards. How do we address that? Multiculturalism.
Well, I don't know how we address it, but we have to find the right terminology to address it. I mean, in many ways, I think we're speaking the same language. Well, we're not speaking the same language. We've got
we want the same outcome,
different terminology.
Right.
The outcome I want is a blended society. Is a society where people are positive. But I think there's a problem with integrating people and with inspiring people, and I don't think the present government is remotely inspiring people.
True.
And if the government isn't, if our society is not inspiration, you can't inspire yourself. It has to come from outside. In the word inspiro, I breathe in. So we're breathing in sort of a fecal discharge. It's unpleasant from what we breathe in. If we breathe in deeply, the inspiration of Westminster is not a pleasant experience. But you see, so we've looked at the Islamic thing. We could shift slightly and look, for example, at what about those cultures within Britain, let's say within London, like for example the Hasidic community in North London. And I'm thinking here not so much of Lubavitch. I know Lubavitch well. I used to teach in one of their schools. But the Bubaver or the Satmar or the Belts.
Yeah.
Who often they don't speak English. They're isolating the community. So the children are not taught English; they're taught Yiddish.
Yeah.
And they're denied. Often they're denied an education, particularly boys. Because boys are considered to be brighter, so they can only do Talmudic studies from the age of 13. And there are schools. There are primary schools. I think there's certainly one, because I think Izzy Posen. I don't know if you know Izzy Posen. He broke away from that community, but he went to a cheder, which only taught a primary school, which only taught in Yiddish. One of my mothers was Jewish, so I feel on quite firm ground. But you know, surely it's something that we would say is culturally not acceptable. So that is part of our that's part of our problem, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because you mentioned, the reason you mentioned this example is to also move away from just the Islamic example. And my problem with multiculturalism, or basically undermining the one set of values, is not just against the Islamic culture or certain people in the Islamic tribe. Same applies to everybody. I mean, there are also Eastern European Orthodox kind of Christians who are also in some places, even some of the Christian Turks, let alone the others.
Oh, yes.
They're also not integrating. They don't even speak English. So that's also a problem. I mean, exaggerated example.
But it's not just language, is it?
Language is very important. Language is definitely very important. Language is also not just in terms of language / tone and behavior, because you can't expect every single first generation to speak with the same accent, British accent, but obviously ideally they're second generation, and then we have sometimes even second generation not having the same accent. It's not prejudice, by the way. There's something about, and because you understand the art of language, it's something about if both sides communicating with each other feel the comfort, again, not necessarily have the king's English accent or whatever, but it will help with communication, will help with having the same kind of set of behavior and attitude. My issue is with multiculturalism, I'm also against, again, very exaggerated example, if a bunch of Yanks from America come here, and we already become Americanized anyway with all these burger places. But if they also change our culture, I would also be against that. We were supposed to be changing their culture, but not that. And actually, to finish this, because you mentioned the government and the country, it's mostly our fault because we became weak. Not many people know how to even define British values. Whereas America, even to this day, America has this power with that flag that even first-generation migrants, if they choose to, they can embrace the flag and become American and speak American and English and everything else. We've also became weak. All the politicians and all the many people in society, and maybe the education system. So I don't necessarily blame some of the first generation when they come here and they either fail or are reluctant to even integrate because there's no encouragement anyway. And so it's our job to at least bring down the numbers or slow down the pace because it's gone too quickly for us to even encourage. It's crazy.
But yeah, I think you've now leapt from identifying a problem, which I would agree is there, to now providing one particular solution. It's like Kemi Badenoch and Suella Braverman proposing the Rwanda solution. as the only solution to
No,
a
no, not the only, but yeah.
particular problem.
But not necessarily. No,
Um,
no. This is just one set of like solutions. It's not just the only. It's not just like
but
close down the doors, the borders, and everything's going to be fine. That's not the only solution.
but it isn't another solution to, for example, if we were to look over to Israel in
Sure.
better times, there would have been a principle. You take up the idea of return. You go to Israel, and almost immediately you're in a program to learn Ivrit,
Yeah.
and it's quite intensive. And in fact, the Israeli language system is something that has influenced the teaching of English as a foreign language and other languages around the world. It's a really good system. And why are we not imposing that? In fact, the other day somebody did suggest that, and it was smashed down as being liberal and rather snowflakey.
It's not.
Um,
It's not necessarily liberal or snowflakey. It's there are well-meaning humans, and I call them mostly academic liberals, but also many others as well. Many others in the West who think most of the time a kind of almost like almost tangible solution, like a physical policy, will fix problems because throughout the last century or so in the modern West, we come up with a policy to fix a problem. There's a pothole, we
mhm.
fill it. But that doesn't always work. And I know we might actually disagree because it goes also towards economic policies. And then when it comes to certain things, intervention not only doesn't help, sometimes it backfires. Germany has certain policies when it comes to helping with German language and programs. And it's gone worse over the last 10, 15 years in Germany when it comes to lack of integration compared to like 20, 30 years ago in Germany. And so
Yes.
it's not always intervention.
Germany has a bigger migration problem than we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah,
Significantly
but
bigger.
in defense of what you said about Israel, the same could be applied to the good days of America. America didn't necessarily have a like program that you join because they don't believe in that sort of stuff, but they just had the atmosphere. You just feel it in the air. You go in, you get out the airport, you see the flag, you get a job, you work hard, and you embrace the flag, and you can choose to become American and your kids to become American. Again, it's not an easy land to live. But it was up to a point in the 20th century. You had Chinese Americans, German Americans, Arab Americans. They all became American, even first generation Iranian Americans. But as in Europe, first generation migrants, even if they want to, it's very difficult for them to feel first, like German or Danish or whatever French. Britain is still much more welcoming. You can, if you choose to, you can still become British, but we're still a little bit weak in terms of defending our values.
Well,
Encouraging.
I think I think you put your finger on the issue, which is first of all identifying what our values are,
Yeah.
and part of our values are what we're doing now,
Mm.
which is having a charming debate about things we disagree on.
Yeah.
The only way we're going to advance is by having
Mm.
debates with people that we don't share the same,
Yeah.
people who don't share the same views. We need that free speech.
Yeah.
And this is one reason why I must say the more you show videos of Tommy Robinson, the more I warm to him. I know he's got a
That's
background
scary.
which is
You're
perhaps
being brainwashed.
questionable. I'm not being brainwashed.
I'm kidding.
I just think he comes across as a nice man. Now that
Well,
may
he's
be
also
your
growing up
influence.
compared to 15 years ago. Yeah, he's also growing
Yeah,
up.
well, everybody has to change. That's that's the point about life. We're in a constant state of flux. But you mentioned policies. You mentioned policies, and you're implying that we shouldn't have a policy. We're not going to solve this problem by having a policy of integration
We
and
could have some
language learning,
policies,
putting
but
it
not,
onto.
yeah, not as an ultimate
But
solution.
you mentioned your own policy, which is to slow down immigration.
Just
Which
one of
you
them.
know,
It's not the only solution. You can have it.
but that solution is dependent on a Home Office which isn't lazy, indolent, and led by twits, isn't
Treacherous.
it?
Literally,
At,
I
at
agree. I
the
agree.
at the moment, it's just wishful thinking because we've got so many people in hotels, and it's not a matter of, oh, they shouldn't be in hotels. Let's put them in huts. Let's put them on an
Yeah.
airfield. The issue is we're not processing them properly. And if we're not processing them properly, then we've got a whole generation of people who ultimately may find their way into our society. Are they going to be grateful? One of the things about you is you're constantly saying how grateful you are to be here. But would you feel that gratitude if you've been left in limbo for 3, 4 years in a hotel?
No,
You would
of
feel
course.
frustration, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but I also
So are we not breeding
no, because
contempt?
but the difference is even from day one, when my mother had to go through that process, and she always reminded me, even when she was going through the process and afterwards, she was saying, "Hey, it's up to the country, it's up to the new country to decide if they want me or not, and I'm gonna have to be patient." Unfortunately, there are some people who they feel self-entitled, and actually, there's a lot of them in the Iranian community who are actually here who came here via different routes, sometimes student
Hmm.
visas, economic migrants, sometimes asylum seekers, some of them fake asylum seekers, whatever. I've speak to them. Some of them are still self-entitled. Some of them are still saying, "Yeah, of course Britain should have taken me in." Like, on what ground? Well, because I want to be here. They took our oil 70 years ago. Like, what's that got to do with anything? You can't just say
But
Britain was
the
evil.
statement, the statement "I want to be here" should be a point from which we should be able to capitalize and say, if you want to be here,
Yeah.
demonstrate it, show it, work,
Yes.
pay taxes, contribute to our society.
Absolutely, and actually, a
And
very
that
basic. I would do a very basic interview question from day one because I have a feeling. I mean, people are gonna lie, but some people are so proactive with their passion of hatred. Some people, like the ones who are here, depending on different cultures as well. I mean, some of them, a lot of them are now the Islamists, not Islamic Islamists. They proactively tell you they hate this country. So if anybody, that first question, if they say they don't like the country, out. I'll just
Well,
like you're not allowed to come in.
why would they want to be here? Yes, if you don't like the country,
Well, no, there's been
go
a
somewhere
because
else.
there's a big opportunity here, economic opportunity, and but also as the numbers went up, they can feel safe by just going to parts of Luton or Birmingham. They can just stay in one area, don't have to even speak English. Again, that is I'm on your side in terms of lack of integration programs. We could have some sort
Hmm.
of program. I'm not resisting any sort of
But
scheme.
our schools don't work, our universities don't work.
Yeah.
So we're then say here we've effectively got another policy.
Oh, I lost you. Your voice is gone.
Education
Oh,
system
you're
doesn't
back.
function. The
You're back. You're
education
back.
system doesn't function. I'm so sorry. It's like talking to God. The education system doesn't function,
Yeah.
and then the Home Office doesn't function. So we've got to have a working government before we can solve these problems.
I think we both agree when it comes to that, and I think we have to become slightly radical, short term, medium term, in order to prevent long term extremism and actual backlash.
Hmm.
Because those who are saying any policy that you say, Maya Tousi, about like I don't know, bring down the numbers or stop the illegal migration or discourage them, that is extremism. That's like far right. I'm like, what we are saying is to prevent any sort of like 10 years from now or 5 years from now an actual civil war or like far right rise, because you have to do a little bit of and you need, by the way, I've said this so many times, you need a few kind of good integrated migrants to also stand up with the British nationalists, with the British patriots. We need them to also fly the flag. And
Yes.
that's why I disagree with Steve Laws, because Steve Laws, not necessarily on the fact that he said anyone who's even mixed race should be deported, even if they're born here. That's not the only issue. It's the attitude. And the people who claim to be English patriots or British patriots, British values, set of British values also include being it doesn't have to be you have to be a wet lettuce, but you have to be polite. You have to be go with due process. We believe in the queue system, and going around acting like the French, trying to burn cars just because you're angry. It's not what we do here. We don't do revolutions. So there are certain elements of what they call themselves right wing nationalists. They act like the French. I mean, if I were to use that kind of exaggerated example, we are British. We can be robust. We can resist authority. We can fight for our values, but you don't have to shout at each other. And I know people get frustrated, but have some civility.
Absolutely, absolutely. Enter into debate.
Yeah.
But to do that, you need to have the language, and I think our first priority has to be education. Our second priority has to be to sort out the Home Office
Yeah.
and to and sort out what we do with immigrants. So, for example, if we go back to our education thing, and we've got a large number of people coming into the UK to come to our schools, to come to our universities. The public school system, for example, is increasingly filled with people from other
Yeah.
countries.
Sure.
Here we've got a screaming opportunity to send
Mhm.
these people back as ambassadors for our system. but if we treat them so appallingly, so for example, our visa system. So for example, if you're a child and you're here until A levels,
Yeah.
and you're from another country, you'll find just as you get into the A levels, you've got to apply for a new visa,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
and this can throw such a spanner in the works, particularly
Well,
if you're
that's why a lot
trying
of
to
people. I
manage
don't.
your own system.
That's why I don't blame a lot of people to just skip the system and just basically become asylum seekers as economic migrants. I don't blame them. Maybe it's not the right thing to do. It's, you're breaking the law. But when and I'm not saying that we have to basically make the legal economic migration routes even looser. But we can have a
No, you have to make them.
merit based system,
No,
but also make it work. If someone deserves to be here and actually is contributing, make it easier for them. Don't make it even harder for them to not stay.
make it. No, I'm not saying make it easier. Make it clearer.
Clearer.
So the system has to be clearer. The system is designed to be confusing. That's what Mrs. May set up, the hostile environment. Let's confuse everybody.
Make it
I mean, have you
confuse.
tried to renew your passport? It's a nightmare.
Yeah, I know.
An absolute nightmare. Having anything to do with this pernicious ministry, the Home
Yeah.
Office. The Home Office. If I ran my home like that, my home would be burning down.
It's bad.
It's
On
not a
the
Home
one
Office,
hand,
it's
when it comes to
chaos.
the legal rules, it's so like dictatorial and so extreme and rough and like resistant. But then the other stuff is like it's got holes in the bucket and it's just leaking. Yeah, if you just get on a boat, you get the Domino's pizza, you get to a hotel. That's not really also when we talk about when people like me criticize it. I don't want it to imply that that's like paradise. Oh yeah, they're getting the free pizza and the hotel now they're happy. But it's just undermining the other people who have been trying to like. You're right. Go through the application. Like I don't even know why I should answer here. Do they want me? Do they not want me? It's very
Yeah,
confusing.
the questions are misleading, and you need a lawyer literally
Yeah.
with you to prod you into which answer you give. We shouldn't be in that position.
No.
We should be in a position where we're using clear English, and increasingly in government, the language and in law, the language which is being used
Yeah.
is not plain.
No.
It's using codes and slogans.
Yeah.
So unless you're part of the group, you don't know
No. No.
what this means.
Yes.
And that's something that's happened in the last 15 years.
No.
I don't think dependent on the present government.
I think
Uh,
it was just well, not necessarily coincidence of timing that government change. It was, I think, the
yeah,
generational in terms of political generation that was happening anyway post Blair, like when it came to Brown and then Cameron, and it's also the
absolutely.
civil servant type of civil servant as well. Same time, late 2000 to
Yeah.
now, it's just getting worse and worse. But to kind of finish this, obviously, I think
I'm sorry.
the main point of it is obviously we started by
Well,
discussing the whole
we could agree. We could agree, Maya. It's just about language
It is, but also.
and about the difference between identifying a problem
Mhm.
and then putting forward a solution.
We
I think
have to agree also, not just me and you, but the country agree, at least the good people, whether they're liberal or conservative or whatever they are, on the common ground in terms of the outcome. Because if we don't want the same outcome, so there are some certain people more on the political left who actually want to eliminate what we call a common ground British values. They just want a blank canvas. And there are some in the Islamist community who want to replace it with Sharia law. There are some people, maybe I don't know, in the Orthodox Christians who
I,
want to bring back hanging. And we don't have
I
that
think
common. It's crazy.
I think there's very few. This is a deeply extremist position. You should be talking to Mr. Gove about this.
Don't get me started with that guy. He doesn't know what he's doing. No, this problem is getting.
he really is a bit of a donkey, isn't he?
No,
I
no.
mean,
But no. I
donkey
mean, I just
Gove.
wanted to say there's also a lot of people because you talk about free speech, but also debate, and because we were talking about Steve Laws and Tommy just shouting at each other, and there are people who might be actually watching this, and some of them might actually be saying that they see a debate as you have to win it. Oh, come on, Maya, destroy him, or like no. Most of the time,
No,
unless you're attacking me, I'm not going to randomly attack you. Most of the time, debate is supposed to be a debate. Actually, I think because I mentioned it so many times. Back in the ancient Persian Empire, they had this policy of having a debate sober, and then having a debate drunk, and then see if they still have the same positions. I think we should just bring that back.
there you are. This is a cue for a whiskey, isn't it?
Exactly, and
Um,
people change. Yeah, we will have this debate next time in a pub over a whiskey and cigar.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much. Any last few words?
Thank you.
Any last few words?
No, I have no last few words. I just think I don't want to have the last word. I hope I don't come across as someone who wants to have the last word. I'm not a Mrs. May or a Suella Braverman. I'm quite happy. I'm quite happy to let you have the last word. But no, I think the most important thing is that we are simply discussing.
Yeah, it's a start.
That's not too liberal and snowflakey, is it?
No. Well, these days it's the conservative side that's promoting free speech and debate. So it's okay. You're basically far right now. On that note, thank you so much, Tim Wilson.
Thank you.
I'm Tousi, and we are the media.